I'm too nostalgic, I'll admit it.
We graduated 4 months ago. What can you possibly be nostalgic for?
I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I've begun reminiscing events before they even occur. I'm reminiscing this right now. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back in it in my memory, and I didn't have a good time.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for another comic book retrospective. So I got the gang back together. First up, we've got the award-winning comic editor, writer, Joe Corralo. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We've also got the voice of the voiceless, the man so cool they call him the Breen, the comic book hoarder himself, Eric Breen. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
So we decided to go, we're going DC Comics this week. Now, most people associate Jerry Conway, with Spider-Man. That's a lot of what he did with his earlier work really made his name. But he did have a story out there called Superman versus Wonder Woman with artist Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, released in January 1978. And this is an odd book there, Joe. It's not really released as comic books, but it's also not really a graphic novel. It was released more like a magazine.
Yeah, this is more in probably, this is almost like a beta version of what Marvel would do with their like Epic line, or their when they would do the graphic novels. Yes, just like that. I read mine in my Adventures of Superman by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez hardcover, but yeah, they were doing at this time some like tabloid size comics. They would do these like Treasury edition reprints. Marvel would do the same thing, but they were doing some more like original stories in this format. This is one of those original stories. They did one with the Legion, with the wedding of Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl. So, and they had some other graphic novels like that. They just actually reprinted this in like an oversized hardcover tabloid edition that you can also get. So it recently came out, so it is readily available.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost ahead of its time. I think that this format, not the big magazine size, but actually shrunk down a little bit smaller than even a regular comic book, might be one of the ways of the future as far as comic books, period, where you just get a storyline in, an 80 to 100 page kind of book, but it's not hardcover. You don't get the extra frills on it to jump up the price. What do you think, Joe? You think this is something that we're going to see in the future?
I think so. I think you're seeing this is the page length is what people now are referring to as graphic novellas, and you're starting to see some smaller publishers. I think Aftershock's doing stuff like this. I've heard other publishers talking about doing it, where they're doing these, and you are getting that from the big two as well. Like DC will sometimes put out, the square bound books that are a little more like a graphic novella length is what they call it now.
All right, Eric. So you would have picked this up when you were a young man. This would have been released a month before I was born, but you would have gotten it as it happened. Is this something you read off the shelf? Was this something that you thought was exciting to see Superman and Wonder Woman about to come to blows on a cover of a comic book?
Yeah, In these days, as Joe touched on, the Treasury editions were a pretty big deal in the industry because DC had been doing them since the early 70s, like a collector's series. So they kept changing the names. Big shock from DC, and then Marvel started doing them in the mid 70s, and then the Marvel and DC got together to do the Wizard of Oz, and then the big one, Superman, Spider-Man. Now the tabloid size worked in those days because they were on, magazine stands. Mm-hmm. And, if you guys remember like Look magazine, things like that, those were done in that size. So they had to, the size had to be there to stand out. And, when this came out, this was, really cool because I said, you got two characters who were friends in the Justice League, even though these are different versions of them. Mm-hmm. They still looked the same and acted the same, and you could kind of put that aside. But yeah, this was a fairly, if I remember correctly, this was a fairly big deal at the time.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Joe, but when I was looking at magazines as a kid, I was looking for Bop. Remember Bop?
Don't think I do.
You don't remember Bob Magazine? You got the Corys and you get the poster, you put it on the wall. Oh my goodness!
I did not.
Even I'm too old here, Breed. Joe doesn't even remember Bob Magazine.
Yeah, I guess Joe and I, the young guys here. I don't remember it either.
You missed it too. Breed was too busy at the skating rink eating pizza. Enjoy some Bob Magazine. All right, so Joe, this comes out.
An active kid.
There you go.
In January 1978. Interesting stuff, obviously, going on here with DC, where they're doing some fan service. Fan service is always good. You got Superman versus Spider-Man, as you talk about a crossover. You've also had Superman versus Muhammad Ali. So these are some of the things that they kind of do. Is there anything going on in 1978, the early part of the year, or later in 1977, that people need to be aware of as far as the history of comic books is when this is coming out?
There's a few interesting things here. Green Lantern hits issue 100 at this time. That's a pretty cool thing to be happening. You have the wrap up of the Karate Kid maxi series, which was the first major spin-off of the Legion of Superheroes. And I'm trying to think there. Those are two big things. You have Doom Patrol coming back through Paul Kupperberg and Joe Staton through Showcase. Over at DC, and then over at Marvel, it's you got Shooter and Perez on Avengers. I think we're right before the Korvac saga. I think we're right in there. That realm, because we would be in the high 160s with Avengers at this point.
Yeah, the first part of that was cover dated January 78, so literally this, right around that time.
Okay, yeah. So you'd have that. You would have Len Weins still on Spider-Man. He's it's close to the end of his run, wrapping it up to get over to Marv Wolfman. We're still just a little before you get Mazzucchelli on not Mazzucchelli, before you get Dave Michelinie on Iron Man, a little before, a few months, maybe a year before that. We're not too far from Frank Miller's Daredevil. Daredevil will be in the 150s at this point. I think Gene Colan is still an art at that point for it. So yeah, there's interesting stuff. You're getting the Rises Shooter. You're getting, I think Sal Buscema's on Hulk at this point. This would be late 200 late teens, early 20s around now. So yeah, there's definitely interesting stuff going on. It's a lot of stuff sort of solidifying the Bronze Age and moving into that. We're basically just about to hit the DC implosion and Shooter taking over Marvel.
Absolutely, so Marvel hitting its stride and
so this is a really interesting
that you wouldn't imagine. Yeah.
Oh, and the Black Lightning retrospective we did, that part of that is happening during this as well.
Absolutely. If you haven't read that original Black Lightning story from Tony Isabella, do yourself a favor. That's a damn good story.
Yeah. It's interesting because David Michelinie would be doing stuff around then. Tony Isabella, trying to think, because Michelinie was writing the Karate Kid maxi series. Then he's mostly doing stuff over at DC, and then Shooter kind of takes him over to Marvel, and him and Layton builds up that relationship that goes beyond Marvel. It goes to Valiant, and after that, so you're seeing a lot of the starts of things.
There's also in 77, if I'm getting the timeline right, the DC had a series called DC Special Series, and there was an oversized Wonder Woman, I think it's number 9, where it's another grandiose World War II adventure. And because I think they were in World War II in her own book at the time too.
Yeah.
But that kind of, if I'm getting the timeline right, it's kind of like whetting your appetite for this.
Yeah, no, I think so. Cause, some of the characters in here are from some stuff right before this, and But yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure we're just about to get into all that. So
we are about to get into it. I'm going heel right now. I'm gonna say we've been batting 1,000. This is the first story we've done on our retro. I've been introduced to it. I came away. I was like, it's not my favorite story. I love the art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, but this is not my favorite characterization of Superman. Braid. He almost comes off as one of the villains.
I did not see that.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's some implications here, Joe, as far as what Superman is willing or not willing to let the U.S. government get away with.
Sure. I mean, keeping all this in mind, that this is supposed to be taking place, this is in 1941. This is supposed to be a story that's like
right after the Battle of Midway.
Yeah, this is all supposed to be as if it was happening from those early years of Superman. And if you go back and you're looking at the early,
a different version of the character, yes.
Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster stuff, it's a lot of Superman busting into places and being like, I'm not going to let you all get away with that. And like, you're putting an end to this. And he was a very, very stern sort of character. He wouldn't really warm up until years later. So Jerry Conway, who wrote this, is really pulling from like those old stories.
Well, let's get into it. We got we aren't going to go by episodes because this is essentially a graphic novel or novella, and it opens up. We've got Japanese drone attacking an aircraft carrier off of the Midway. We see Superman intervening, and he discovers there's a Japanese sub, and he's there under the guise that Clark and Lois are actually there to interview Admiral Nimitz on Midway after the battle has been completed. Superman, of course, arrives to inform Nimitz himself that the sub was carrying an agent. They were like a diversion. They were a diversion as the Japanese were actually sneaking a secret agent into Mexico to meet up with some Nazi agents or some German agents in Mexico to stop the Manhattan Project. And then Superman, after he has been given some information, is asked to return to Washington, D.C. So we got the table set here with some good action. Breen, the visuals here where Superman is fighting the Japanese aircraft, and you got the aircraft carrier and everything. It was absolutely fantastic. It was exhilarating. It was an exhilarating opening, Breen. That's what I would say.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Especially with the larger format that it was originally presented on. Yeah, the 2-page spread where he's coming up on the aircraft carrier, and just that whole battle in general. You're right. Lopez is great at action sequences, and I like the part where after that's over, when he gets called to Washington, and he goes there, and the 2 MPs try to stop him. He goes, "No one's allowed to get past this, not even you, Superman." And the guy goes, "Let him in before." And when the 2 guys go, if he'd wanted to break past this, how in the hell were we supposed to stop him? The other guy goes, "Yeah, you'd rather not know." I mean, I thought that was my favorite part of the opening sequence.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Very, very good stuff. So that's setting the table of Superman's involvement. He finally knows about the Manhattan Project, which is going to be a key plot point that's driving this entire story forward. After that, we see that there's some Nazi agents. Apparently, they're special agents. They are there to kill an FBI agent and his prisoner. I believe they're outside the White House. Wonder Woman herself intervenes, and as she's fighting them, we discover, Joe, that they are actually walking bombs, and these guys are starting to blow up. And we see, as she's kind of defeating these foes, there's like a sedan that takes off that has apparently been observing what's been going on, and she ends up tailing the sedan with her invisible jet, ends up tracking them all the way to an airport, and then into Grand Central Station in New York, your neighborhood. And then she intervenes, she finds the 2 men and saves Albert Einstein himself, who was apparently at the Grand Central Station. And then she also ends up discovering later on, as she's undercover, that the FBI has covered all this stuff up. Yeah, no, it's really dense. And I mean, just to give people an idea, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's 10 pages of comic. Yes. That is not like this. Now that would be like 3 separate comics
It would be the story about finding out and stopping the guys in front of the White House. Then it would be a story about
The
tailing them.
cliffhanger would be the sedan taking off and the
yeah. And while she's tailing them, we'd get, like flashbacks and exposition, stuff like that. And then it would be a full issue about getting to Grand Central and saving Albert Einstein. So what was something you could do in 10 pages would now be about 60.
Absolutely. But that is her introduction into the action. She doesn't know about the Manhattan Project, I believe, yet.
No.
But she's going to be brought into the inner workings of the government very soon, Breed, because we see a Japanese sub has in fact arrived on the coast of the shores of Mexico, and a character by the name of Sumo arrives to join Baron Blitzkrieg, who I believe has just recently been introduced to DC Comics. I don't think he's been around all that long, but he is somewhat an established character, and we end up saying there's an American scientist. They need some information from him, and Sumo has been brought in to assist Baron Blitzkrieg, and one of those things he's going to assist on was with an interrogation. It turns out he's not going to interrogate anybody. He's just going to hypnotize him and find out the location of Project Manhattan, Breed.
Yeah, you said he'd recently been reintroduced, and one of the things that I was really liked when I read this was they footnoted World's Finest Comics 248, which had come out a couple months before. So yeah, it's now we can't get a footnote in a regular comic, but we were even getting them in treasuries back then. Read back issues, kids. So yeah, the two, the two bad guys come together, and you instantly see the difference between the two. That even though they were both fighting for the same cause, one man had a sense of honor. That even though he did agree from the beginning, he doesn't agree with what his country is doing, but he is a loyal soldier, so he is going to comply. And I think that's the difference. You can tell Baron Blitzkrieg, he's all for this.
He's a true believer, as they would say.
Yeah, and the Sumo Samurai, which I don't think he actually is given a name, just the Sumo. Yeah. You can almost tell from the first panel where they're standing across from each other that at some point it's gonna turn into, it's not going to end well between the two. I think that's a little foreshadowing even from the first panel. And yeah.
What do you think about the character design here, Joe? I don't think you can make a character named Sumo the Samurai and make him look like that anymore.
No, you can't. But yeah, to build on Breen's point, you have at the bottom of page 25 there, Baron Blitzkrieg's face is in shadow with the fist up and clenched, and Sumo's looking down. So, a lot of stuff in the visuals to help flesh out that relationship. But yeah, you absolutely couldn't now. And honestly, you could barely do it then to have a character who's like Sumo, samurai, the last
with
samurai.
An enormous, Japanese flag on the front with like some samurai gear and some blades and stuff.
Like Conway's definitely leaning into sort of a bygone era at this point of comics. You also
even with now, the verbiage here, there's some what would be considered nowadays some derogatory terms in here for Japanese people.
Yeah, Conway, the way he takes this, he goes up to the line, but he doesn't cross it at that point. I don't think, which isn't easy to do. I think I think he uses like enough derogatory terms for the time, but he doesn't go into, and same thing with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. They don't go into, straight up caricature, which would
it's not
happen
Bugs
at
Bunny from the era where you're using the illustrations to mock.
Yeah.
Now I would say, remember the story is set in 1942. So you do need a little historical relevance and accuracy. And that's something that we're not allowed to do in 2021, which kind of cheapens stories that are set in other eras.
I agree.
Also, there's nothing in this story about the Sumo Samurai that isn't presented as honorable. So this, it's anything else you might say about that. He does come across as, even though we would like to think he's in the wrong. He is doing the wrong thing for what he believes is the right reasons, and there's a sense of honor to him that you'd never feel in Baron Blitzkrieg.
Absolutely.
No, he's a straight up bad guy. He kind of's got that Iron Man helmet, and then he's got some swastikas and all that kind of stuff all over his uniform. And he's straight evil Joe. So that's definitely quite apparent. As we get back into the story here, we see Diana has gotten word about the Manhattan Project. She ends up sneaking into the Intelligence Command Center and steals a file on the Manhattan Project. And she is aghast when she learns the details about what is going on, Eric Breen. She ends up having to return to Paradise Island and talk to her mother. She seeks counsel after discovering the shocking truth of what Project Manhattan is. At the same time, we see Superman has returned to Metropolis. Lois Lane is absolutely pissed at Clark Kent because she thinks he ditched him, or he ditched her in the midway. She's like, I've been waiting for you. We're supposed to do this story. Of course, he stashes in, and he's the old school Clark Kent that's kind of a bumbling idiot. He's like, I don't even know what you're mad about. And they're very upset. And then we have Perry White jumping out there saying, we've got Wonder Woman attacking Chicago. That was a nice little thing there, Breen. I liked it.
Yeah, see, that's where I disagree with your take at the beginning of it. I think is where Superman, is told what's going on, and I think he reacts to it differently than Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's take is, I'm not going to let this happen, period. Superman wants to know what's going on and how he can make sure that things don't get out of control. But he's far less opposed to the Allied forces having a weapon like this, whereas Wonder Woman, she's just going to take it out and be done. She's
not very pro-man, let's put it that way. She talks about how men are just violent. They're all prone to destroy each other.
Yeah, but this was also
I'm not
5 or 6 years into women's lib, and yes, I mean, he kind of laid it on a little thick.
Well, it was a little bit thick, but I get it.
Yeah, it's not only that, but it works better here than most places because on top of women's liberation and all that, at this point, Wonder Woman herself in the comics she's only really experienced man's world for, at this point it would be months, maybe a year. So like we're still so early in her ideas and what she's forming about man's world. So it does, like, it all fits pretty well.
But she spends this entire issue. It reminded me of like whenever in the Flintstones when Fred would really exasperate Wilma and she'd just clench her fists and go, ooh, that man. That's kind of Diana, whether it's Superman or Steve Trevor or anybody else.
I thought it fit the character. I didn't have any problems with the character. It did. Wonder Woman. I was like, it makes sense. He did lay it on a bit thick. He's maybe trying to put a little too much emphasis on her, issues with the way that men are handling the situation. But you are in a World War II, so you can understand why she would be upset by that. But here's my issue, Brady. I think it's quite clear. Well, it's certainly hinted at the beginning, and I think confirmed at the end, that Superman is aware of what Project Manhattan is, the implications of what they're going to do with Project Manhattan, and essentially supports it. He's there to stop Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
that's where I say the characters. It feels like he's kind of he's a company man here, Breen.
Well, he's an American, and he says that early in the issue as this adopted American. Because I said, I took from that he understands the gravity of the situation, and that this doomsday device, whether it's used or not, needs to be in the hands of someone who wouldn't use it. Would use it only as a last resort versus a show of force. And that's what I think. That's the part I think that the Wonder Woman in this story didn't grasp, because she was coming from a place of it can't exist. Superman understood. Well,
she was technically kind of right if you think about it.
Sure.
Well, that depends on how you agree, whether you agree with how World War II ended.
I completely agree with it, but I don't think that's how it would have ended if we would have had Superman. Let's put it that way. That's what the problem when you start adding these characters in a historical event.
Absolutely. I
Sure,
that I 100% agree with.
That's why these stories,
absolutely.
they always kind of just make me feel like,
No, that's fair because obviously you wouldn't need any of this because Superman would fly in and he would grab the Emperor, he'd grab Hitler, and he'd plop him in front of Roosevelt and Churchill and Stalin and be like, have at it, boys. And
now
away.
at least there was a spot in this story where he said nothing short of I can't remember what the term he used could even stun me. So I mean, he wasn't as overpowered as he would become as the Silver Age rolled on in this story.
So he eats it a couple times. That gets us into this Chicago thing because Superman arrives on the scene. We see Wonder Woman. She's got this big light pole, and she's like, "You ain't stopping me." She immediately hits him into the water. This is my favorite part of the whole book, Joe. Mm-hmm. She hits him into Lake Michigan, and he comes flying out, and he says, "Even if she is a woman, no one treats me that way." And he just punches the shit out of her right through a building.
Oh yeah,
I was like, that's the one. I can respect that one. That's the Superman. It just
for sure. And building up a little bit on that again, like that relationship that Superman has with America and Wonder Woman, I can kind of see how Conway's kind of setting this up as they're both outsiders. They're both not really part of the human race in that sort of way, but Superman is the adopted son of America and how that reflects that. And Wonder Woman is so far removed. She's more or less representing a neutral country that naturally
is siding with America over the Nazis and Japan, but she doesn't want anyone to have this power. Yeah. In her mind. There's nobody that could be able to use it. Yeah.
Because, and we get into it a little later where she's basically like, no, I oppose all of this, but if these are my only choices, this is what I'm doing. So.
Well, they're basically avatars for the two opposing viewpoints of what a discussion has gone on, basically probably during the war and in the 80 plus years after.
So we get this fight starts out, and obviously, he punches her through the building after she throws him to Lake Michigan. They realize that this thing is going to go sideways quick, and they agree to trial by combat. I was like, these fools are going to fight to the death. They're like, there's way too many people in Chicago. We haven't killed anybody yet, but we are going to kill somebody eventually. And I don't know. It felt like a gentlemanly thing to do. It's like, let's fight to the death where other people aren't there, so we won't hurt them.
Exactly. And on the moon, which, that must have been the inspiration for, Superman 4. So
there might be a couple of inspirations for Superman 4.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, but can we at least point out, as much as I enjoyed this story, so far we've only destroyed condemned abandoned warehouses that are right in the heart of the business district. But let us take this
Batman versus Superman,
Infinity and beyond.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone on the loop is just like, Mondays.
But this time we see that Baron, Blitzkrieg, and Sumo are in place to attack Los Alamos, obviously heavily involved with Project Manhattan. And we get Superman and Wonder Woman end up on the moon. They're going to fight to the death. And then they finally jump in there, Brain, and Baron Blitzkrieg he's doing a diversion on the outside, whereas Sumo is gone inside. And eventually, I thought it was Little Boy that they were stealing, but they're actually some type of prototypes for nuclear weapons. There's two halves, and it turns out Sumo is unaccounted for with one of those halves, but Baron Blitzkrieg gets it. And there's no Superman to stop any of this because he's on the moon. The military realized this, and they decided to start blinking lights on the coast to send an SOS to Superman, which I thought was kind of funny. And so we end up getting Wonder Woman trailing Samurai or Sumo as she tracks him with a Geiger counter back to Japan. And we have Superman tracks Baron Blitzkrieg to New Orleans, Breed.
Yeah, well, let's just set up real quick. The part of the story was the prototypes for a bomb that the rest of the world was told hadn't been developed, that actually did exist, had been placed in Los Alamos and Oak Ridge, Tennessee, to keep them separate just in case. So, Sumo and Blitzkrieg go to the respective places to steal those to bring them together, while Superman and Wonder Woman are battling down the moon. And when the when the military gets wind of that, that's when they send out the SOS, which was the most clever part of this book. I will agree with that. And so they basically have to get to those two places to try to stop them, because because they were told that since they hadn't gotten all the bugs worked out yet, that they could explode, they could detonate.
They're
just by bringing them
temperamental.
together. Yeah, so they can't let those two come together. So they're dispatched to stop them from accomplishing that, and that's how you get the two battles between Superman, Blitzkrieg, and Wonder Woman and Sumo.
So Blitzkrieg, it turns out, as far as strength goes, he's a match for Superman. He punches him. Superman's like, holy crap, what am I going to do here? This guy's got me. But he does persevere. They fight it out, and then obviously Superman ends up winning in the end. As far as Sumo versus Wonder Woman, he definitely underestimates her. She's just as fast as he is, and it turns out she might not be able to get her lasso of truth around him, but she was able to get her arms around him and able to twist and bend him up and eventually dispatch both the foes. But it's a lot of fun. The art of this is just, what is it? French chef's kiss. It's beautiful.
Yes. Absolutely.
And you notice that when the Superman, Baron Blitzkrieg, that's just a balls to the wall battle. Wonder Woman and Sumo, him being a man of honor, there's a respect that because she attempts to talk it out first. And that there was the two battles felt completely different.
Yes.
And I think, like I said, Baron Blitzkrieg wanted the bomb. He wanted to use it. Superman wants them to have it. Always got the impression that Sumo wanted them to have the bomb, but I don't think he would have been all that anxious to use it either. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like if you could put the closest two ideologies together in these two fights, that's why it broke down the way it did.
Yeah. No, for sure. And also, it's basically more or less like 16 straight pages of mostly action at the end.
The fighting, absolutely. And after they've dispatched them, they end up, I think they go to an island, right?
Yeah,
they bring the pieces with them. This is the other problem I have with the story, Bree, where I think it really hurts Superman's look here, because he's sitting there, Joe, and he decides to use his X-ray vision on these prototypes, and he essentially turns it into a nuclear bomb and kills two people.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very Superman-like. He literally just murdered him with a nuclear weapon. That's a lot of murder.
Yeah, no, but I think the issue here is the way it's set up is it's like, oh well, they're too busy fighting. They're so busy fighting each other they destroyed themselves instead of realizing
they could have left with them
situation they were in.
Superman's the only one that could fly.
No, Wonder Woman had the plane. He was there. They could have carried him off because they escaped. But it had become a duel of honor between Blitzkrieg and Sumo, and they knew what was going on. They, for whatever reason, chose not.
They were fighting Superman letting off a nuclear weapon. They didn't know that was happening. It was like, out of their.
They said we've got to get out of here.
Yeah,
they said we got to get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do.
Have you ever fought a sumo samurai breed? You can't hear stuff like that when you're in the heat of battle.
Have you?
Absolutely. I've thought about it. I wouldn't be able to hear anything.
Well, as long as you've thought about it, I acquiesce to you.
Well, I'm just saying, Breed, that ending was awful. It makes like Superman kind of killed him.
You're making me think of Guy Gardner again.
Well, it makes sense. Like, you are the one championing that dirty backfighter Guy Gardner who deserves to eat at every freaking issue he's in. My goodness.
Go suck your thumb.
Oh, come on, Joe. Doesn't Superman kill these people?
Here's the thing. I'll I'll go right down the middle and upset everybody. So yes, he does say, or he or Wonder Woman, we don't say who, Sumo, Blitzkrieg, hurry, we have to flee. They are trying to get them to stop fighting and go with them, and they're so consumed in their own fight that they get lost in it, and that explosion happens. What I think this is it's like, it's taking a little bit of liberties to have a more symbolic sort of ending of, they're going to destroy each other. War will just destroy them. But, I also understand, like, what you're trying to say, Wes, where it's like, Superman could have also just grabbed the two of them and flew out, holding both of them or whatever as Wonder Woman's flying.
He could have grabbed that nuclear weapon and thrown it into the sun so fast that it didn't explode until it got there.
I don't think he had that level of power yet.
It
would have made more sense for him to fly off with the two if he had.
Well, absolutely, because you don't want an airborne nuclear blast, trust me.
Well, also, they don't know what a nuclear blast really is yet.
At this point, they would have been testing, but I'm sure Superman wasn't privy to the results.
Yeah, but yeah.
He does say, Sumo, Blitzkrieg, hurry, we have to flee. And Sumo says,
as he's flying away,
to see, I will never leave without the weapon. Try to take me and I will fight like a tiger and die like a samurai.
Yeah.
So
he should have picked them both up by the cuff of their collars and flown them off. Be like, you children, you almost died. I accidentally set off a nuclear weapon out there. Instead, he's like, well, I ain't stopping him. You stopping him? All right, let's get out of here. It wasn't my favorite one. It was. We were batting 1,000, Joe. It's my fault. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. This was, it's a good, fun story. It's not like the most serious story, but it's a nice, fun throwback. It's a nice way, like, especially to like ease people sort of into the idea of maybe reading some comics that are older than this one, because it's like it's a little updated, brushed off sort of version of like some of the Golden Age comics. And
listen, you go back to Golden Age Superman, you're going to see some really weird stuff. Like, he might be in love with his cousin, Old Superman, I will admit, you just never know what's going to happen to those issues. It's so random.
No, for sure. So I think this is a nice way to kind of read those kind of comics without, necessarily reading those. So it's a little more updated, a little more, fresh with that kind of stuff. And again, like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez's art.
The art is amazing.
If you're a fan of his art, get that, they put out that hardcover tabloid edition that's gigantic, or get the back issues, or get it in a collection.
That opening double page spread would be an amazing poster to have over your bed. Like, good.
100%. Like, it's definitely. And if you're not familiar with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, getting it in that size and all that, that'll win you over. That'll be like, you'll just be like, all right, what's next? What else do I got to read? So definitely would recommend it for that. He kind of helped define the look for DC for years.
He's if you've seen a DC character T-shirt, you've seen Jose Luis Garcia Lopez's art, because they're almost all his.
Yeah,
because he is the default artist for, like I said, most of their apparel, your retro apparel. But I do want to point out though, even the epilogue of this story. Mm-hmm. Where FDR says, as long as I'm president, these will never be used. Yep. Historically accurate, because I believe he did say that. And obviously, it was Truman that okayed the usage of them. And even at the end, I said, as Wonder Woman is, basically, giving her speech at the end, and Superman's just walking behind her going, damn, will this woman not shut up? I mean, he's just pensively listening. So I don't know. Maybe not the greatest story in the world. I loved it.
Bree's ready to throw me in the Jimmy category. Like, can I be saved, Bree?
No, but no, I mean,
All right,
love
I've
this kind of
humored you
stuff.
long enough.
But no, it's interesting. I love that epilogue. My grandfather was in the Navy in World War II, and he was a diehard Republican, but he always said his favorite president, the best president of his lifetime, was Truman because he brought him home. And it's always that kind of So I'll think about that kind of stuff when I go back and read some of these things.
Absolutely. So I do want to say thank you very much to Eric and Joe for joining me today talking about Superman versus Wonder Woman. Very interesting, interesting comic book as far as history, kind of going back and telling the two characters when they're very early in their runs, back from, in 1978, a different format. The art in it's spectacular. You're right, Bree. This shouldn't be taken too seriously. It's meant to be fan service. How are you going to bring these two characters into conflict? The Project Manhattan actually kind of seems like something that would make sense that could take them into a philosophical difference, even though they're both on the Justice League. So I'll give you the last word, Eric. You got anything to say before we head out?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Like I said, it's well worth the time. It's a fairly quick read, visually stunning, and like I said, maybe even a little thought provoking. Maybe a tad dated, but I think it holds up reasonably well for a story that's now 43, 44 years old.
Yeah, and it does a good job at being like a one-shot in a way that I think if you're not familiar with these characters, or maybe you only know them through the Justice League, or you only know more recent iterations, they do enough to make it self-contained enough where I think if you're not familiar, you'll enjoy a lot of the little bits and pieces here. Like, they go out of their way to make it for someone who's not as familiar with the characters. So we get to see Wonder Woman as Diana Prince doing some investigative work. We get to see her go back to Paradise Island and reinstate, let's give everyone kind of the background, but through the actual story, it doesn't feel too ham-fisted. We get the whole bit where, it's just a couple of pages of Clark and Lois bickering at the Daily Planet, and Perry White, demanding they get that story in. So there's a lot of the little things that people are very familiar with the characters that are seeded in just right in the story. So you get that taste of both the comics when you read this.
Absolutely. I do want to say thank you both. And we'll be talking about Iron Man next week, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. See y'all later.
Bye.
Take care.